You probably have a can of it sitting in your garage right now, blue and yellow label, a few dollars at any hardware store. Most people think it's just for squeaky hinges. But that same can has a long, quiet history as a household pest deterrent, and it's worth understanding why it works, what it can actually do, and just as important, what it can't. Let's start with where this product actually came from, because the real story is more interesting than the marketing. In 1953, a chemist named Norm Larson was working in San Diego for a small company called the Rocket Chemical Company. He had only a handful of employees. He wasn't trying to invent a lubricant for homeowners. He was trying to develop a coating that would protect the outer skin of the Atlas missile from rust and corrosion during the Cold War era space and defense program. It took him 40 attempts to get a formula that worked. That's where the name comes from. Water displacement, 40th formula, WD-40. The formula works so well at penetrating tight seams and displacing moisture from metal that workers at the contractor building the missiles started sneaking cans home to use on rusted bolts and squeaky hinges around the house. The company noticed the demand, and by 1958, they were selling it to the public in aerosol cans. By 1969, the product had become so central to the business that the company renamed itself the WD-40 Company, since that one formula had become nearly the entirety of what they sold. So why does something designed to protect missile skin from moisture also affect insects? The underlying property is the same. It's a lightweight petroleum-based product that spreads into very small gaps and leaves behind a thin, oily film. Insects breathe through small openings on the sides of their bodies called spiracles, which connect to a network of tiny tubes that carry oxygen through their body. A light oil coating can interfere with that system. This isn't a secret or a suppressed discovery. It's the same basic principle behind horticultural oils and other oil-based pest treatments that have been used in agriculture for well over a century. Oils work by physically coating and restricting airflow in small insects, rather than by chemical toxicity the way a modern insecticide does. Here's what's important to understand though. WD-40 is not registered with the Environmental Protection Agency as a pesticide, and that matters. Registering any product as a pesticide in the United States requires extensive testing and documentation under federal law, specifically the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, first passed in 1947 and significantly amended over the following decades. That process is expensive and time-consuming for any company to pursue. The WD-40 Company has never pursued that registration, which means the product is not labeled, tested, or approved for pest control use by any regulatory body. Using any household product in a way inconsistent with its label isn't something any manufacturer will recommend, and it isn't something regulators encourage either. So, while the oil-based mechanism is real, straightforward chemistry, treat everything that follows as an old, informal household habit passed down over generations, not as a substitute for actual pest control products or professional treatment when you're facing a serious infestation. With that context in mind, here's what people have used it for over the years, and just as importantly, where the real limits are. Ants. Ants navigate using pheromone trails, a chemical scent path laid down by worker ants to guide the rest of the colony to a food source and back to the nest. Wiping down a section of countertop or floor where you've noticed an ant trail with a light application of household oil can disrupt that scent trail temporarily, which is why some people notice ants seem to lose the path after a surface has been wiped down this way. It's worth being clear that this is a short-term disruption and not a permanent fix. The colony can and will lay down a new trail elsewhere within a day or two, so this is a stopgap measure at best. If ants are a recurring problem in your home, finding and sealing the actual entry point along the foundation or exterior wall is far more effective than repeatedly disrupting trails after the fact. Wasps and hornets. A direct spray at a wasp or at a nest during dusk when wasps are less active and mostly clustered inside for the night can incapacitate wasps it directly contacts due to the oil coating effect on their bodies, restricting their ability to fly and breathe normally. This carries real risk though, and it's worth taking seriously. Wasps can still fly and sting when agitated, especially in daylight hours, or when a nest is only partially treated, and the colony becomes defensive. Treating an active nest is genuinely safer left to a proper wasp-rated insecticide, formulated and tested specifically for that purpose, and typically able to spray from a safer distance, or better yet, to a licensed pest control professional. This is especially true for larger nests located near doorways and walkways where people pass frequently, nests more than a few feet off the ground, or in any household where someone has a known allergy to wasp or bee stings. An allergic reaction to a sting can be a medical emergency, and it isn't worth taking a risk with an untested method to save the cost of a properly labeled wasp spray, which typically runs somewhere in the range of $10 to $15 at most hardware stores. Household cracks and seams. A light application along baseboards, cabinet seams, or door thresholds can act as a mild deterrent and residue barrier for crawling insects like silverfish, since many small insects tend to avoid oily surfaces underfoot and will reroute around a treated area. This is worth thinking of as a supplementary step at most, not a replacement for actual sealing and caulking, which remains by far the most effective and longest-lasting way to keep pests from entering a home in the first place. A tube of caulk costs a few dollars and, properly applied, will outlast any oil-based deterrent by years rather than weeks. If you're dealing with an older house that has visible gaps and gets more pest pressure than a newer, tightly built home, there are several specific areas worth checking. And in nearly every case, proper sealing materials matched to the location will do far more good than any oil spray ever could. The sill plate where the foundation meets the wooden frame of the house is a common gap point in homes built before the 1980s, when sealing standards during construction were less consistent than they are today. A silicone or expanding foam sealant applied along this seam from inside the basement, especially at corners and anywhere pipes, cables, or wires pass through the wall, closes off a major entry route for crickets, spiders, silverfish, and centipedes on a permanent basis, rather than just discouraging them for a few weeks at a time. Older double-hung windows built with a rope and pulley counterweight system have a hollow, vertical shaft running through the wall cavity to hold the iron sash weights. These shafts can unfortunately serve as a pathway for insects, and in some cases, small rodents, moving between the basement and upper floors of a house. If your home has this style of window, a qualified contractor or handyman can properly seal or insulate these cavities, which is a far more permanent and effective fix than attempting to spray oil into a hidden wall cavity. Exterior door thresholds often develop small gaps at the base over time as wood shrinks, swells, and settles with seasonal changes in humidity. A door sweep or a new threshold seal, available at any hardware store for a modest cost, closes this gap properly and also improves the home's energy efficiency at the same time. Older porches with tongue and groove wood ceilings can develop small gaps between boards as the wood dries out and shrinks over the years. These small gaps can be filled with an appropriate exterior wood filler or caulk rated for outdoor use, which holds up far better over time than any topical oil treatment would. Chimney flashing, the metal strip where a chimney meets the roof line, is a common entry point for insects, and, if not properly maintained, for water as well. This is worth having inspected periodically by a roofing professional, since flashing issues can lead to both pest entry and much more expensive water damage, if left unaddressed. Well caps in the surrounding concrete pad, on properties with a private well, can develop small gaps over time. Because a well is a drinking water source, any sealing work here should be done with materials rated as safe for potable water systems, and it's worth consulting the well's service provider or a local well contractor, rather than using any general-purpose spray or sealant near the wellhead. Electrical meter boxes on the exterior of a house have a cable entry point that, if not properly sealed when installed, can allow insects inside. Because this involves a live electrical connection, any sealing work here is best left to a licensed electrician or the utility company itself, rather than attempting to spray anything into or around an active meter box. Dryer vent housings on the exterior wall have a flap that should open only when the dryer is running. Over time, lint buildup or a bent flap can prevent it from sealing properly between uses. Cleaning the vent and flap periodically and replacing a damaged flap assembly, which is an inexpensive part at most hardware stores, is the correct fix here, rather than spraying any aerosol product near a vent that handles heated exhaust air. Crawlspace access doors are frequently one of the least weatherproofed points on an older home, since they're often out of sight and easy to overlook during routine maintenance. Weather stripping the frame and door itself and confirming the door closes and latches securely is a straightforward afternoon project that meaningfully reduces both pest entry and energy loss through that opening. Garden pests. Diluted oil sprays, a small amount of a lightweight oil mixed with water and a small amount of dish soap to act as an emulsifier so the oil disperses evenly rather than floating on the surface, are a long-established low-toxicity method for managing aphids, whiteflies, and spider mites on garden plants. This general approach is similar in principle to commercial horticultural oils that are specifically formulated, tested, and sold at garden centers for exactly this purpose. Aphids and similar small, soft-bodied insects are particularly vulnerable to this kind of treatment because of their size and their exposed respiratory openings. It's worth being very clear, though, that you should never spray a full-strength petroleum-based product directly onto plant leaves, since it will damage or burn the foliage and can harm or kill the plant. If you want a reliable, garden-safe oil treatment, a purpose-made horticultural oil, or an insecticidal soap, both widely available at garden centers, is the safer and more consistent choice, since these products are specifically tested and formulated at a concentration that manages pests without harming the plant itself. A few important safety notes are worth stating plainly here, since something being practically useful doesn't mean it's without any risk. These products are flammable in aerosol form until the propellant fully evaporates, which typically takes a short time after application. Never spray near open flames, pilot lights, space heaters, a running stove, or any electrical outlet or appliance. Never use any petroleum-based product near drinking water sources, wells, or anywhere it could come into contact with food or food preparation surfaces. These products are not a substitute for actual pest control when you're dealing with a genuine, established infestation. A significant cockroach colony, active termite damage, structural damage from carpenter bees, or a wasp or hornet nest that keeps returning year after year are all situations where a licensed pest control professional or product specifically registered and tested for that exact pest is the appropriate and safer choice. A household oil spray is, at best, a helpful supplement for occasional minor pest encounters. It is not a replacement for genuine pest management in a home dealing with an established or recurring problem, and treating it, as one can end up costing more time and money in the long run if the underlying issue isn't properly addressed. One more note that matters for health and safety rather than pest control specifically. If you ever find a tick embedded in your skin, do not apply any oil, petroleum product, heat, nail polish, or other chemical in an attempt to make it detach on its own. Public health guidance specifically advises against this approach because it can cause the tick to regurgitate saliva or stomach contents into the bite wound, which can actually increase the risk of disease transmission rather than reduce it. The correct method, recommended by health authorities, is to use fine-tipped tweezers, grip the tick as close to the surface of the skin as possible, and pull upward with slow, steady, even pressure without twisting or jerking the tick. Afterward, clean the bite area thoroughly with soap and water or rubbing alcohol and keep an eye on the area over the following weeks for any rash or flu-like symptoms, which should prompt a call to a doctor. The bigger point here isn't that there's some hidden industry conspiracy keeping useful information from ordinary people. It's simpler than that. Household products often have more than one practical use. Some of those uses are genuinely helpful in a pinch, and understanding the actual chemistry behind why something works helps you use it sensibly. It also helps you recognize the real limits of a quick household fix and know when it's time to reach for a purpose-built product or bring in a professional rather than relying on a workaround for a problem it was never designed to solve in the first place. So the next time you grab that can off the shelf, you'll know exactly what it can do, what it can't, and where the real line is between a handy household trick and a job that calls for the right tool or the right person instead.